Part 20. After the divorce, the ex-wife became a creditor. Author, Ahuan. Chapter 192. Feng Lun and the other gangsters feasted on the leftovers from the party. The hostages watched the gangsters eating deliciously. These things that they would never even look at in the past have now become precious things that they can't reach. Han Qian, who was sitting on the chair, was about to fall asleep. Someone came over to talk to him and asked Han Qian if he could get him out too. He would give him some benefits. Han Qian opened his eyes and glanced at this guy. He seemed to be something. He was in the bureau, his position was not small, and he took millions in bribes. Han Qian didn't want to be associated with this kind of person. There were many people who came to strike up a conversation and show friendship, but Han Qian ignored them. It was daybreak outside, and Toad, who had been unconscious for half the night, woke up. He looked at the corpse on the ground and glanced at Han Qian again. Without saying anything, he picked up his weapon and prepared for action. The police outside stood guard all night, and Nuan stared at the main entrance of the hotel with dull eyes all night, standing motionless. Sudden. The police started to take action, and the main entrance of the hotel opened. Everyone had a black mask on their head, some had guns in their hands, and some walked forward with their heads lowered. No one spoke, and they got on the prepared board. Bus. The car started to leave, and the police officers also began to take action to chase the criminals. Half an hour later, the remaining police officers began to enter the hotel. As they entered the hotel, a small team climbed out of the sewer behind the hotel and boarded a van that had been prepared. The van entered the surveillance corner, and the people in the van began to move quickly. The white van cover was torn off and turned into blue. The license plate was quickly changed, and even the vehicle logo was changed. They moved quickly. Han Qian whispered to them. He must have been from the repair shop, and he got hit by the butt of a rifle. Han Qian fainted. When he woke up, he was already on a small boat. There was no one else on the boat except Feng Lun. The small boat was listening to another search for the speedboat. Woke up. Han Qian nodded, then stood up and punched Feng Lun in the face. He was subdued and pinned on the boat in 3 or 5 strokes. He didn't have any energy after not eating all night, and Feng Lun didn't want to waste his energy. Han Qian sighed after opening it. Mr. Han, I said we don't want to meet anymore, and I sent you a message, but why do you still show up at this party? You are the only person I don't want to embarrass, but you embarrass me. Night. Han Qian was lying on the boat wearing rough clothes and leaning against the side of the boat wearing rough clothes. Feng Lun, have you thought about the consequences? You killed 2 people. Even if you escape abroad, you will still have to live a life of hiding in Tibet. Feng's Haida is not worth it. After saying this, Han Qian moved to the right again. The ship seemed to be out of fuel. Feng Lun sat on the edge of the boat with a gun in his hand, raising his head and looking at the boundless sea in the distance, with a self-deprecating smile on his face. Worth it? Not worth it? Brother Han, my father was sentenced to 40 years inside and out. What is the difference between this and death? After my father was imprisoned, my mother still had me, but when I was imprisoned when I came out, the grass on my mother's grave was as tall as a person, and I. At this point, Feng Lun's lips trembled, tears fell from his eyes, and he choked. When I was in prison, I kept blaming my mother. Why? Why didn't you try to help me clear my grievances? Why didn't you come to see me? I miss her very much. I didn't see my mother for the last time. They all said it is difficult for a man to do anything in his life, but being a son is the easiest. But as a son, I don't have the slightest chance to honor my parents. How can I live in vain as a son of man? Brother Han. In fact, you and I are from the same place. In fact, you are better than I want to go to the extreme. What if? If something happens to the two women who meet you at night, you will not let any of them walk out alive. Han Qian was silent. Maybe Feng Lun was right. Han Qian could go astray in order to treat his mother, but he could also go to extremes because of an accident due to warmth. He understood Feng Lun, but he still didn't agree. Han Qian sighed and said in a hoarse voice. Then what will your father do in the future? Who will take care of him after you leave? Feng Lun laughed at himself. My father and I only met and got along for 2 or 3 years. Why was he imprisoned for the second time? Because he was about to become a fool. His imprisonment was an induced interrogation. This time I exposed Feng Haida's criminal evidence. My father will receive a compensation after he is released from prison. Hey. I love my country very much, if there are not these bad people who are corrupt and bend the law. Han Qian took a deep breath, stretched his hands behind him, and said softly. What's the grudge between Feng Haida and your father? He and my father are from the same village. Our two families are related. My father is very good at studies. He originally had the opportunity to be an official in the county. He has succeeded and has been admitted, but... You say. My father is also called Feng Haida, he has the same name and the same age. He replaced your father. Oh, he and my father are still love rivals. Oh my God. Han Qian really didn't know how to handle it. How could love rivals be so vicious? Then thinking about the time when he caught Lin Zongheng in the hotel, Han Qian understood that love rivals can indeed be very cruel. For example, he wanted to kill Lin Zongheng. Both of them were silent. After a long time, the wind blew on the sea. Han Qian looked at the silent Feng Lun and said softly. What's on your mind? I was wondering if I should throw you into the sea. You are covered in blood. You must be able to attract sharks, right? Don't let me meet you again, trust me. Don't worry, we'll see you there. Feng Lun smiled at Han Qian. At this time, Han Qian suddenly stood up. At some point, he found a screwdriver in the box of the boat. The screwdriver pierced Feng Lun's right leg. Feng Lun took it with great pain. He pulled out a pistol and pointed it at Han Qian's head. But he didn't shoot. He put his foot in Han Qian's face. He gritted his teeth and stood up and boarded another speedboat. Then he used a wooden stick to push away from Han Qian. Feng Lun looked at Han Qian and smiled. Qian opened his mouth and cursed the country, and the grandson wanted to kill him. Bang bang, 2 shots. Feng Lun drove the speedboat and sped away, while Han Qian lay on the speedboat holding his arms. Got shot. Feeling that the blood in his body was getting less and less, Han Qian's vision was blurred and his brain fell into chaos. He really wanted to keep Feng Lun and give him to the police. Han Qian fell into dizziness again, and Feng Lun on the other side was not having a good time either. The severe pain when he pulled out the screwdriver on his leg almost caused him to faint. Unexpectedly, he was betrayed by this Han Qian in the end, but his life should not be the same. It will never be better. On the other side, Li Jinhai's people intercepted the bus at another beach and found that it was full of hostages and not a single gangster. When he called to inquire about the people staying in the hotel, he reported that there was only an injured child in the hotel. Girl and 3 corpses. Han Qian disappeared. Nuan fainted after receiving the news. After waiting for a day and a night, more than 1 million ransoms were paid, but in the end, even the shadow was not found. Yan Qingqing sat on the ground blankly, her eyes blank. Tu Xiao sent people to find information about Han Qian. The sun sets over the western mountains. The area police station received an alarm call from fishermen who were out at sea. They found a man who had fainted on a small boat on the sea and suffered a gunshot wound. The fishermen had sent him to the hospital for rescue. When the news was reported to Li Jinhai gave up his hands with a headache. He went down to deal with it. Now he was thinking about how to explain to his sister that he had lost his uncle, and he was also thinking about how to explain to his superiors. More than 100 police officers allowed these gangsters to escape right under their noses. Another late night, the police in the area called. The young man who was shot was named Han Qian. Li Jinhai picked up his clothes and stood up to leave. At the same time, he told the police outside to call Vice President Wen of Changxiang and Director Qian of Honor immediately. Han Qian found it. Not many people gathered outside the intensive care unit of the hospital. Li Jinhai left early after hearing that his life was not in danger for the time being. Tu Xiao, close day to warmth, you poetry. Yan Qing Qing. And the warm second aunt. When the doctor walked out of the ward, he looked at the big guys outside the door and sighed helplessly. The patient's main condition is concentrated on the head. He suffered multiple blows to the head. He has a slight fracture of the brow bone, a slight fracture of the forehead, a slight fracture of the bridge of the nose. The gunshot wound to the shoulder is not fatal, but it caused the patient to lose too much blood. We have already prepared for him. The patient has been injected with a large amount of plasma. Please come and sign here, and then pay the money with me. Everyone's eyes fell on Nuan Nuan. Perhaps only Nuan Nuan had the closest relationship with Han Qian here. He also looked at Nuan Nuan and said softly, "What is the relationship between Vice President Wen and the patient?" Vice President Wen. Ah. After shouting twice for warmth, he came back to his senses, tilted his head and looked at the doctor and said softly, "He is my husband." "Okay, please ask Vice President Wen and I to sign and pay. In addition, Mr. Han's injury requires a lot of medical treatment and cannot be covered by medical insurance." Oh. Hearing that Han Qian had so many injuries, Wen Nuan was dumbfounded. Why would he care about medical insurance? Seeing this, Yan Qingqing picked up her bag and frowned. "I'll pay the money. Just sign for Nuan Nuan." "Where can I pay the money?" The doctor was a little confused and couldn't help but ask. "Mr. Yan, you and the patient." "My future husband." The doctor was stunned for a moment. When Wen Nuan reached out to the doctor came back to his senses. Looking at the name on the list in his hand, the doctor turned his head and looked at the ward. "Current wife's signature? Will the next wife pay the money?" The party chapter is over. After the divorce, the ex-wife became a creditor. Author, A Huan. Chapter 193. A lot of things happened in this small city. Changxiang's president and vice president were absent from work at the same time. Glory's general manager was absent from work, and Han Daxian was absent from work again for no reason. Suliang made several calls to Han Qian, but all of them were turned off. He was a little worried about Han Qian. The day before yesterday, Han Qian said he was going to a party, and then something happened that night. Will Han Qian be in danger? Suliang looked at Qian Wan's position. The big money didn't come today either. In the hospital ward, Han Qian woke up. From the time he fought with Toad in the hotel until Feng Lun took him away, Han Qian didn't feel any injuries on his body. Now he was sitting on the bed looking at the case in front of him. Is this a short composition? Of course, Han Qian only dared to look at the cases at this moment. Yan Qingqing was sitting by the bed preparing oral medicine for Han Qian, and Wen Nuan was standing in front of the window talking on the phone. The atmosphere is very strange. In the past, when Yan Qingqing was close to her, her hair would explode because of the warmth. What happened today? Have you taken medicine too? In fact, all this is warm thanks to Yan Qingqing. This is also the agreement between the two of them. When Han Qian was hospitalized, she could turn a blind eye, but after being discharged, she became delusional. Han Qian didn't know the reason, but Yan Qingqing I don't know, only Nuan Nuan knows. When she was taken as a hostage, Yan Qingqing protected her behind her intentionally or unintentionally. When the gangsters came to capture Nuan, it was Yan Qingqing who was the first to stand up, and Han Qian who came after her. Maybe the two were love rivals, but when Nuan was very grateful for what Yan Qingqing did that day. She knew in her heart that if the two exchanged places, she would not have the courage of Yan Qingqing. When Han Qian was frightened, a youthful shout came from outside the ward. "Uncle Qian, my dad said that you shined at the party and got injured. I'm heartbroken. I want to stay safe for you like." Wei Yi, dressed as a good girl, pushed in the door and just opened the door. She saw the two women in the ward and Han Qian who was lying on the bed. The woman in a white suit stood in front of the window and looked at her coldly. The woman in a black butt-covering dress and stockings sitting by the bed was looking her up and down. Wei Buseo, who considered himself a beauty, was frightened and swallowed his saliva and whispered, "Uncle, I will come to see you tomorrow." Wei Bujuan closed the door and left. A little scared. These two sisters are also very pretty, with sharp swords and knives in their eyes, so dangerous. In the ward, Yan Qingqing raised her head to look at Wen Nuan and said indifferently, "No." Wen Nuan shook his head lightly. "Never seen it." Then the two women's eyes fell on Han Qian's face. The meaning of their eyes was self-evident. Han Qian picked up the case, covered his face, and explained in a low voice, "Wei Tianquan's daughter, I just hit her with my car." Wen Nuan nodded lightly, tilted his head and looked at Han Qian and whispered softly, "Oh. I think you didn't hit her personally, but you hit her hard, right?" Han Qian looked aggrieved, then Yan Qingqing followed up. "Han Qian, you don't even let minors go." Han Qian turned his head and sighed. "My Yasha Empress, she is 19. The words fell and Wen Nuan continued, "You mean you can't let it go when you're an adult?" "I go to sleep." There was no way to continue talking today. Han Qian had just laid down when the door was pushed open again. Ji Jing, dressed in sportswear, bent over and walked into the room cautiously. Seeing this, Nuan simply closed her eyes and lay down on the other side. On a bed. Out of sight, out of mind. Ji Jing walked to the bed carefully and said softly, "Qingqing, is my eldest nephew asleep?" Yan Qingqing curled her lips and whispered, "I'm pretending to be asleep. I'm so upset that I dare not open my eyes." Han Qian, don't sleep anymore. Where's your momentum at the party? Where's that domineering attitude of holding a gun? Why are you so cowardly now? Like a shrimp. After hearing this, Han Qian opened his eyes, but it was only a crack, and murmured in a low voice, "I'm not playing with you if I have a temper. I shouldn't be aggressive with outsiders. Besides, I was like a bloody gourd that day. Where did I get my momentum from?" Recalling the scene of that night, when Han Qian stood covered in blood on the second floor and pointed a gun at the gangsters on the first floor, telling them that they must let his woman go, the eyes of Wen Nuan and Yan Qingqing were full of intoxication. Han Qian was so domineering at that moment. He was like a bright light at that moment. Lying on the bed, Nuan turned his head and spoke softly to Han Qian. "Originally I was thinking of taking time to go back to my hometown to see my parents, but now you're like this, how are you going to go?" "I just called the people I can contact and try not to let the outside know about the person who confronted the gangsters with guns at the party." "It's you." Yan Qingqing nodded after hearing this. "Yes, otherwise you will provoke so many ignorant little girls to protect you." Now Han Qian really didn't want to talk. There were a few jealous people around him. He narrowed his eyes and smiled at Ji Jing. Ji Jing smiled back, gentle and gentle. Then Yan Qingqing pulled Ji Jing to tell her how heroic Han Qian was that night. As they chatted, questions came up. Wen Nuan said softly, "How did you deal with those two gangsters before you came here? Did you fight with them?" "Well, that damn guy said he was going to harm you. I heard it, and then I knocked him unconscious and tied him up. Then I met that guy named Toad. We exchanged dozens of headbutts, and he just fainted. Oops. My phone was smashed by that Toad. When he mentioned the phone, Han Qian immediately wanted to cry, but before he could cry out, the door to the ward was opened again. Carrying fruits and flowers, and wearing a blue fairy dress, the nursery rhyme sneakily revealed its head and whispered. "Road. He hasn't woken up yet? Hey. How can you be a hero at such an old age?" When the monster came, Han Qian started to pretend to be asleep, but her words made Yan Qingqing dissatisfied and she turned around and said, "What does it mean to be a hero? He is protecting our safety." Nursery rhyme waved her hands and said nonchalantly, Yes, you don't need him to protect you if you don't cause trouble. I used to think Han Qian was quite hateful, but now he seems really pitiful. Why do I meet you guys who don't make people worry? As a teacher, I want to give you guys are giving lectures. Get out. Yan Qingqing retorted angrily, while the nursery rhyme pretended not to have heard it at all and walked to the warm bedside and whispered. Tell me how heroic he is. I'm currently writing a novel, The Domineering Little Wolf Dog of a Gentle Female CEO. Wen Nuan smiled and sat up to tell the nursery rhyme. Certainly. Han Qian was infinitely magnified. The four women were not idle all morning. At noon, they started to taste delicious food in the ward. Han Qian drooled when he saw the food on the table, but there were many wounds in his mouth. Now I can only drink porridge. In the afternoon, Li Jinhai came, followed by many police officers. When he walked into the ward, Li Jinhai looked embarrassed and said softly, Xiao Qian, we may have something to ask you. Can you let your friends go out first? What was supposed to come came anyway, and Han Qian shook his head lightly. I haven't committed a crime, and they don't need to go out. If Director Li has anything to say, just ask. Besides, I do know Feng Lun. Director Li's voice made Li Jinhai feel uncomfortable. You are listening to Novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. After the divorce, the ex-wife became a creditor. Author, A Huan. Chapter 194. Mr. Han, this is your police officer ID and police number. In view of your behavior at the time of the incident and the confessions of many hostages, we suspect that you are involved with the gangsters. Please cooperate with our investigation. This policeman was young, around 27 or 27 years old. He looked very handsome in uniform, and his speech was very professional. It was not difficult to rule out that he wanted to show off in front of these four beauties in the ward, but he still got offended. Yan Qingqing took the lead. Officer, please pay attention to your words. Your words are very likely to affect the future of our greatest hero of the honor group. If you cannot bear this responsibility, I will sue your workplace in the name of the honor group. Ji Jing continued. Mr. Han is a victim and is currently in a serious injury stage. Please do not impose your incompetence on the victim. Also, you must pay attention to your tone. We are not criminals, understand? The nursery rhyme chuckled after saying this. You chased him as soon as he woke up? I heard that Han Qian drifted on the sea for a day. You didn't know until he was sent to the hospital. Please bring your witnesses and your physical evidence, and then put the word suspicion. Let me tell you, I also studied law. If you want to deal with this matter in a professional way, I don't mind having a chat with you. The last person to speak was Wen Nuan. She sat up and said calmly. Tell me who the certification you are talking about is, and then tell me what they said, and finally tell me where you were when the gangsters took the hostages. In addition, there are many people from the government office who were hijacked in the hotel that day. I suspect that you received bribes from them and are involved with them. The four women's continuous questioning had already made the police a little frustrated. At this time, Li Jinhai spoke. Xiao Lu, please go out first. This matter involves too much, so please stop following up. The young police officer could no longer get off the stage. He originally wanted to speak, but was stopped by Li Jinhai and walked back a few steps with a cold face to the door, but did not go out. Li Jinhai sat beside the hospital bed and said softly, "I've seen your physical injuries. They're all serious. Don't call me Director Li, I won't be able to sit in this position for long. We are all part of the same family. Don't be too irritated. Does your head still hurt now?" When the four girls wanted to speak, Han Qian frowned and shouted angrily, "Shut up, everyone." The four women were quiet at the same time. Han Qian looked at Li Jinhai and smiled. "Second uncle, look at my face, look at my eyes and shoulders that can't be opened. Do you think I can stop feeling pain? My heart hurts more than the injuries on my body. Although I haven't made any achievements, but I also helped rescue a few hostages, right? The woman Tu Xiao brought out must be very influential." Li Jinhai closed his eyes and sighed. "She is an artist who has been very aggressive recently and has the potential to hit the front line. If she is discovered and exposed, there will be a storm on the internet. Are you injured because they beat you?" Han Qian curled his lips and smiled. "Second uncle, you are being hypocritical." Li Jinhai scratched his head and smiled, and Han Qian sighed and said again, "After I sent you home, I went back to pick up the warmth. I didn't bother to say hello to the people in the lobby and walked out of the small fire escape. You know that I have mysophobia, and you also know that I have alcohol on my body. I found it when I went to the bathroom to wash clothes. My phone was flooded, so I went to the kitchen to look for rice. When I came back, I met Daniel, the gangster who was killed with a dagger. He was violating a girl and threatened to harm other women. All my friends were there at the time. I was a little worried, so I took action. When he was holding the gun, I attacked his lower body and covered his head with wet clothes. You can ask the little girl who was violated about all this." Li Jinhai nodded and said softly, "I asked and she said the same thing as you." At this time, the young police officer at the door spoke. "Why can you get in through the fire escape and we can't?" Han Qian didn't even look at him and smiled at Li Jinhai. "It was almost 9 o'clock when I went back. It was already 10 o'clock when you arrived when the incident happened. I was the first one to meet the big man. I heard from his mouth that the criminal had taken control of the hall. After he was knocked unconscious, I took when I was about to ask for help, I met Toad who had just returned from closing the fire escape. Who the hell knows what the Toad did? Anyway, Toad is not here now." Li Jinhai nodded thickly and then said, "And after that?" "Then the Toad said that Daniel was a burden and would be troublesome when he escaped, so he killed Daniel with a knife. After that, the Toad said that he came here to kill someone who cuckolded him, and I also made it clear that I wanted to save Nuanhe and Ching Ching. He didn't have a gun on him, and I didn't dare to shoot rashly for fear of attracting other gangsters, so the two of us chose to fight hand to hand, and all the injuries on my body except gunshot wounds were inflicted by him." "Have you met Feng Lun?" "It was a casual relationship. At that time, I discovered that Tu Xiao's daughter was bullying an old lady who was picking up bottles. This Feng Lun should have been thinking of helping the old lady at the time, and then he was beaten up by some of Tu Kun's friends. I rushed there later, I taught Tu Kun a lesson and gave the old lady either 300 or 500 yuan. I also gave Feng Lun some money to ask him to see a doctor. I haven't seen him since. You can adjust the monitoring someday." "Forgot, I remember it was a rainy day." After the words fell, the guy at the door spoke again. "Time and location. You scolded me when I was here, did I give you some shame?" Han Qian, who was originally in a bad mood, was disturbed by this guy again and again, and his mood was extremely irritable. He got up, used his injured arm to pull out the needle on the back of his other hand, and got out of bed to start. Violent movements when Han Qian's shoulder began to ooze blood, and the pinhole behind him was also bleeding. Everyone panicked when they saw this. Ji Jing and Yan Qingqing stood up and came over to pull Han Qian. Their faces were extremely gloomy, and they gritted their teeth and said, "I'll tell you right away that you can't eat anymore and you're walking around. Second uncle, you can't control it. I don't blame you. I'll call uncle." Hua Luo took out his cell phone and called Li Jinmin directly. Li Jinhai took a step forward and snatched the cell phone from Nuan, turned around and pointed at the young policeman and said angrily, "Get out." The doctor came a few minutes later and rebandaged Han Qian's wound. He also warned Li Jinhai that if he irritated the patient and the patient had physical problems, their hospital would not be responsible and would sue their branch. The second municipal hospital is a private enterprise. Li Jinhai lowered his head and sighed, nodded to Han Qian, stood up and left with others. When he walked to the door, Han Qian said, "The dead lobby manager was the one who cuckolded Toad. You can check his family members. You should be able to find out that Daniel was a man who had been in prison. Feng Lun and the dead prosecutor had a lot to do with each other. One of the gangsters was wearing a military uniform and had a scar on his eye. In addition, when Tu Xiao threatened them to touch their families, they all hesitated. This is all I know. If you think I am guilty, you can feel free to do so at any time. Come to arrest me," and Feng Lun's right leg was pierced by me with a screwdriver. These people dispersed and left in speedboats. Li Jinhai stopped, turned around and nodded to Han Qian again. "It's hard on you." Han Qian said immediately. "There is no need to say these kind words. We are a family and relatives. I will not make it too difficult for you. In addition, Feng Lun has the criminal records of all the hostages present that day. There are also some of your men who are not very clean. I do know how to use guns. I have been to a shooting range with real guns. I have played with mobile phones and rifles. Some of the guns in the hands of gangsters are not for civilian use. You can start at some shooting galleries. By the way, Toad is for construction sites. The educational level of these people doesn't seem to be very high. This is all I can say. I originally thought you would guess that there would be no gangsters in the bus. I overestimated you. Don't bother me anymore. I don't want what happened between Feng Haida and Feng Lun to happen again, uncle. If Feng Lun and I were involved, what happened last night wouldn't be so small. You know me. In addition, you can give me a list of those who accused me. I can definitely tell you the crimes they committed, the amount of bribes they gave and received, the time and place. I can remember them." Li Jinhai left. When he walked out of the door, he patted the young police officer on the shoulder and said softly, "Get ready and go to the area to work as a police officer. In fact, Han Qian still knows many things. Because of you, he won't speak anymore. Don't even think about asking. If the warm uncle comes over, none of us can handle it. Stay with this old guy." In the room, Han Qian endured the pain and lay on the bed, tears instantly falling from the corners of his eyes. It turns out to be really heartbreaking. There are only 2 updates. After the divorce, the ex-wife became a creditor. Author, Ahuan. Chapter 195. The whole city is busy because of this incident. Officials are preparing reports and preparing to reopen the murder case involving Feng Haida. Li Jinhai is also very busy. Following the information provided by Han Qian, he was the first to find out Toad's murder case. Identity. Name Zhang Gang. Male, 34 years old, northerner. In junior high school culture, there was a man who had been married for 3 years. This woman cheated on the dead lobby manager, and the room opening record was placed on his desk. Then came Daniel. Wang Di. Male, 41 years old, Northerner. When I was in junior high school, I was imprisoned twice for rape. Less than 3 months after I was released from prison this time, I suffered severe injuries to my lower body. Female saliva was found on it, and I died of stab wounds. Feng Lun. Male, 28 years old, from the north. Unknown. The man with the scar on his face was also found out 3 days later. Kui Li. Male, 32 years old, veteran, no previous criminal record. The identities of the remaining 7 are unknown. It was Li Jinhai who was embarrassed by this matter, and Feng Haida's matter was embarrassing for the entire Yeomanmen. Who can believe that they are notarized and innocent in the future? The people at the Yeomanmen targeted Han Qian. They needed Han Qian to prove that Feng Haida was threatened. But Han Qian sees no one now. 2 black bodyguards appeared outside the ward, guarding the door day and night. Except for the doctor, Vice President Wen and General Manager Yan who agreed to enter, no one else was allowed to enter. If they had any objections, they could go to their employers. Glory Qianling. In addition, Han Qian's identity was also found out. He was from a very ordinary background, but her ex-wife's elders had great skills. Everyone thought that Li Jinhai was the biggest backer, but it turned out that Li Jinhai was just a small hill. The Yeomanmen tried their best to suppress this matter. Today Qianling came to the ward, sat by the bed and looked at Han Qian who was giggling on the bed. Qianling said with a helpless smile. "You're so worthless, you've been laughing at this phone for over an hour." Han Qian turned his head and chuckled. "Auntie, did you really buy it for me? I really like it." After Hualuo handed the phone to Ji Jing who was aside, he chuckled. "We've known each other for so long and I haven't given you any gifts. I'm sick and you're busy with everything. It makes me feel bad, Aunt. Can you give it to me?" Qianling didn't know how, but the more she looked at Han Qian, the more pleasing she became, squinting her eyes and smiling. "You've already asked me, can I still say no? I'll get to know a few more confidants in the future, and I'll take care of this mobile phone, Aunt." Hey, that's a good feeling. This sentence was wrong. Yan Qingqing and Wen Nuan raised their eyes at the same time. How dare they get to know a few more confidant? Ji Jing, who was holding the mobile phone, was a little embarrassed. When she wanted to shirk, Qianling said, "Here you go, just take it. If the grown man rejects this gift, he will lose face. Besides, Xiao Qian is right. Qingqing and Xiao Nuan are the supervisor Xiao Qians. You have been taking care of them. Come on, I'm sorry for you two ladies, why don't you accompany me when you go to the toilet? It's just a mobile phone, I think he's stingy." The words sounded nice, and Ji Jing was embarrassed to refuse. She held her phone and lowered her head, her face a little hot. Nuan is too lazy to look at this Ji Jing. She is just a ball of cotton. No matter how you say or ridicule others, she will not react at all. Moreover, her ideas are very good. You can say yours and I will do mine. There is no conflict at all. There is stubbornness hidden in her gentle character, otherwise Ji Jing would not be like this. Han Qian didn't feel bad at all when he gave Ji Jing his cell phone. He fiddled with the antiques in his hands and sent text messages, asking about the progress of Suliang and Miss Yalai, and asking about the identity of the plump young woman who was taken away by Tu Xiao. Suliang replied with a lot of hey and hey, without saying anything, and then sent another text message asking Han Qian if he was in trouble. Han Qian smiled and replied with a text message, saying that he was on his honeymoon with beautiful women and was happy. Happy again. Suliang stopped disturbing Han Qian, and Tu Xiao didn't even reply to the text message. Putting down his phone, Han Qian raised his head and looked at the women in the room, and finally looked at Qianling with a silly smile. "Auntie, I thought Feng Lun just gave him a gun as a gift. When I lay down last night, I came back to my senses. This gun is just an accessory. The gift he gave is a bit big. I'm worried that I won't be able to carry it. Hey, you finally spoke. I thought you were going to keep gritting your teeth. Fenlun did prepare a big gift for you. When I was sure that your life was not in danger, I started to investigate. Fenlun took it in the lobby. We have obtained evidence of many people's crimes and asked them to expose each other. Some of them are true and some are false, but there are only a few innocent people. Are you worried that these people will come to trouble you? Han Qian nodded and wanted to frown, which affected the scar on his eyebrow. The more it hurt, the more he wanted to frown, and the more he frowned, the more painful it became. When he was trapped in an endless loop and couldn't extricate himself, a pair of cold hands fell on his eyebrows, stretching his frown. Han Qian raised his head and smiled at Wen Nuan, then turned around and said, I'm worried that they will join forces to mess with me. I even suspect that the little policeman Li Jinhai brought that day has already been talking to people. Auntie, you said that I would tell them all the things in one breath. How much trouble will it be? Qianling smiled and picked up an apple and handed it to nursery rhyme who came to eat at noon. The monster opened its mouth and bit it without thinking. Qianling was slightly stunned and took another apple and handed it to her. The monster shook his head with a naive smile. One is enough. Teacher Tong, can you help me cut one? I'm old and my eyesight is not very good. Aunt Qian, eating it with the skin on is more nutritious and rich in vitamins. Everyone was looking at nursery rhyme with their heads tilted. Only then did nursery rhyme come back to his senses. He took the apple and peeled it with a knife. Qianling didn't think there was anything wrong with nursery rhyme. Instead, she felt that this child was silly and stupid. Silly children are very cute. Qianling smiled at the nursery rhyme, then she put away her smile when she looked at Han Qian, and said with a bit of dissatisfaction. You just thought of trouble and didn't think of other ways. Angry. He didn't know many young people, but Han Qian could understand the elder's thoughts. This time, he frowned and lowered his head regardless of the pain in his brow bone. He pressed his fingers between his brows. While thinking seriously, he ignored that the needle on the back of his hand had started to flow backwards. Blood. Yan Qingqing grabbed the back of Han Qian's hand and placed it on her beautiful black stocking legs, her eyes widened in anger. Nuan felt a burst of anger at the sight of this, but she held it back. After a few minutes, Qianling's face became more and more ugly, and Han Qian's heart became more and more anxious. When Qianling opened his mouth, Han Qian suddenly woke up, raised his head and said repeatedly, I know, when they deal with me, I can also choose to fight back. After saying this, Qianling raised her hand. I've misspoken? Han Qian said again. They have posed a threat to me, and I have also posed a threat to them. As long as I can prove my innocence, they will not be able to attack me. Instead, their secrets are in my hands. It does not matter whether the accusation is true or false. All officials are afraid of the investigation. Even if nothing can be found in the investigation, they will not be able to take a step forward in a few years. If it is true, they will face double GUI imprisonment. In other words, their life and death are now in my hands. If I have good standards, maybe I will become a popular person in our city. Qianling smiled, and Han Qian breathed a sigh of relief when he saw the smiling face. At this moment, he discovered a problem. All the elders, whether related by blood or not, had high expectations and requirements for him. Only his mother-in-law called him a pampering one. Now that Han Qian had figured it out, Qianling stopped bothering this guy to enjoy the service of several little girls. Tong Yao also stood up with Qianling and asked if he could take a taxi back to school, not willing to pay the 7 yuan for a taxi. Han Qian on the hospital bed lowered his head lonely. If his mother-in-law were here, Li Jinhai would never dare to come and question him, and those guys wouldn't dare to play tricks behind his back. Han Qian lowered his head lonely and whispered. I miss my mother-in-law. I was bullied. After the divorce, the ex-wife became a creditor. Author, A Huan. Chapter 196. Xiao Qian, what's wrong with your voice? Someone bullied you or you were hurt? Talk about CAO CAO, CAO CAO arrives. The mother-in-law called. Han Qian didn't pretend to be strong at all. He gave a heavy hum. There was silence on the other side of the phone. After a long time, Li Jinhe said softly. Good boy, don't be aggrieved. Wait until mom goes back to catch them and deal with them one by one. We will fly back tonight. Where is the little white-eyed wolf? Is he still alive? The voice was loud. Yan Qingqing looked at Wen Nuan in shock, and the latter snorted angrily. Hearing his mother-in-law's concern, Han Qian felt instantly comfortable and said with a smile. Mom, I'm fine. I left the party when something happened. When I went home and went upstairs, I slipped and fell. It's fine. I just miss you and Dad. As soon as he finished speaking, Lao Wen's laughing voice came from the phone. Haha, you must be envious of my son-in-law. Not knowing who she was showing off to, Li Jinhe casually chattered a few words. Since Han Qian was fine, she wouldn't be in a hurry to come back. After hanging up the phone, Yan Qingqing looked at Wen Nuan and said suspiciously. Han Qian is his biological son, and you are the daughter-in-law, right? Get out. Wen Nuan cursed angrily and walked to the window to sulk. After Ji Jing cleaned up the ward, she was about to return to the company, but Han Qian stopped her. Why are you in such a hurry to go back? Is there anything going on at the company? Ji Jing lifted up her hanging hair and said softly. Now Qingqing won't go to the company to take care of you here. If I don't go back, only Song Jing and Yang Lan will be left. If Vice President Gao makes things difficult. Nothing unexpected. Ji Jing's words were interrupted by Han Qian. Han Qian adjusted his sitting posture, shook his neck, and said softly. As long as I'm alive, I won't dare to act rashly in a short period of time. After a busy day, just stay here. If you feel sleepy, go to the hospital bed and take a nap. You will definitely be asked about Xiao Yangjia's situation when you go back. This character can't lie either, just stay there. Oh. Ji Jing stayed obediently. The current warmth is because Han Qian is injured and does not care about him. All the debts will be settled together after he is discharged from the hospital and returns home. Afternoon. Yu Shisai came over. This mixed-race beauty was a sight to behold when she walked in the hospital, but she found that the doctors and patients here didn't look at her with much admiration. She tilted her head and thought about it, knowing that Wen Nuan and Yan Qingqing should always here and never leaving. When he walked to the door of the ward, he saw a little girl negotiating something with the two black bodyguards at the door. Listening to the little girl repeating hello and nonsensical English, Yu Shisai sighed feebly. Is English difficult? He walked up to the little girl and ignored the little girl. He negotiated with the bodyguard at the door in fluent and standard English. After chatting briefly for a few minutes, one of the black bodyguards turned around and opened the door to the ward and asked Han Qian in Chinese whether he would allow outsiders to come in. Han Qian nodded, and then he saw a small tail following Yu Shisai being carried out by the collar like a chicken by the bodyguard. Seeing this, Han Qian said helplessly. Let her come in too. Han Qian had a headache when he saw Wei Busong. He was not very good at dealing with this kind of girl with abnormal brain problems. Wei Busong ran all the way and sat on the chair next to Han Qian's bed. He had a cute baby face and a pair of eyes like black gems glared at Han Qian. Her eyes seemed to have sound effects, and Han Qian could feel puff, plop every time they were glaring. Han Qian sighed and raised his head to look at Yu Shisai. He saw that this woman was not much different from Wei Buseo. Seeing this, Han Qian was helpless. Nuan Nuan, your friend is here. When Nuan, who was sleeping in a daze, hummed without getting up, and Yu Shisai spoke softly. Han Qian, actually we can also be friends. You saved me that day. I don't know how to repay your life-saving grace. I have been in the country for a short time and I don't know much about the rules and etiquette of the Chinese people. You and I treat each other as guests. Stop. Nuan Nuan burst out with an exclamation, sat up and walked forward to cover Yu Shisai's mouth, pulling him aside to explain what the relationship represented by treating each other as a guest. When Yu Shisai met Han Qian for the first time, his favorability was only 5%. Afterwards, he was ignored by Han Qian twice. His favorability has become negative. Yu Shisai is no longer prepared to have any interaction with this man. When Han Qian's back was naked and blood flowed down his chin to his lower abdominal muscles, he pointed a gun at the gangster and said, "Let my woman go." Yu Shisai's favorability towards Han Qian was like a thermometer falling into rising straight up in the magma. This is a man full of hormonal temptations. At the same time, there was a poor guy who was foiling Han Qian, and that was Lin Zongheng, who had been kneeling in the hall making chairs for others. The same is true for men. One only knows sweet words and coquettishness. He doesn't say much and laughs with you, but he can risk his life at critical moments. Yu Shisai, who was accustomed to foreign life, understood something this time. Men's shoulders should be able to bear the responsibility of women. At this time, Han Qian had no time to pay attention to this mixed-race child. Instead, he tilted his head and looked at Wei Buobeo. When Han Qian, who was used to watching Japanese comics, looked at Wei Buobeo now, he could feel that this little girl's head was like a train. Still steaming. Still pink. Han Qian took a deep breath and said weakly, "Your head teacher just left here, should I make a call now and ask her to come pick you up?" Wei Bushan's head shook like a rattle and he said eagerly, "No, no, no, Uncle Han Qian, you are overthinking. I came here today for two reasons. The first one is because I heard about your glorious deeds at the party and heard that you were injured, so I was very worried. I can't eat or sleep. Deep in my heart. Stop, 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 remember to study hard and talk about the second thing. My dad asked me to come over and see you. He asked me to convey a message to you. If you ask for anything, he will satisfy you. Brother, tell me what reason you have for my dad." After hearing what Wei Bugwan said, Han Qian raised his head and looked at Yan Qingqing, and then said doubtfully, "Your dad was at the party that night? I heard something about Huishan group." Cough. Yan Qingqing coughed slightly, and Han Qian quickly changed his words. "I didn't hear anyone mention your father's name at the scene, so. Now your mission is completed, you have to go back and study hard." Wei Bushan didn't move, stared at Han Qian angrily with his mouth bulging. "People are worried about you, and you worry about them day and night, so you just send them away? If you kiss me, I'll, ouch, ouch, ouch. Why are you grabbing me by the collar? Let me tell you, I hate other people the most. You pulled my collar, ah. You vixen wants to eat alone." No matter how Wei Buletinshao struggled and cursed, Yan Qingqing grabbed her collar and pushed her out of the door. "Lady Yasha is not used to your child's temper." At this time, Yu Shisai, who was chatting with Nuan Nuan, laughed. "Keek, it turns out that treating each other like a guest is an idiom to describe a couple. It's okay. I don't care. You two are divorced, right?" Yan Qingqing slowly turned her head to look at Yu Shisai. Ji Jing also stood up, Nuanuan closed her eyes and covered her head and hugged Yu Shisai's shoulders to continue explaining. "The general meaning is that she cannot be interested in Han Qian, she must mind him." Wei Buobeo was so angry when he left the hospital. An airport, a vixen, and a MILF with big boobs. Why do so many competitors suddenly appear? But this girl has an advantage, I am young. You are listening to Novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. After the divorce, the ex-wife became a creditor. Author, Ahuan. Chapter 197. 6 o'clock. Nuan called Tong Yao and told her to come over for dinner. It was close anyway, but Tong Yao was not polite at all and came right away with a book in her hand. How to Understand Women. The book was placed on Han Qian's quilt. Han Qian looked at the thick book that was the same as the Chinese language book when he was in school. He tilted his head and spoke to the girls gathered around eating. Can I understand you after reading this book? Your personalities are also different, right? After saying that, Tan Jiao, who was holding a steamed bun, spoke. That's just a catalog. I can buy you whatever copy you want to read. Is the catalog alone so thick? So if you buy all these books and stack them up, they will be taller than NBA stars. Sure enough, women are the most magical animals that cannot be understood according to common sense. For example, right now, these women who are not in harmony gather together for a meal, full of laughter, talking about cosmetics, stars on TV, and men. Fortunately, there is only one man in this men's topic. That is Han Qian. In the words of a nursery rhyme, Han Qian is stupid. He can't show off his personal heroism in this matter. He should first let the police in and take joint action. That might be safer and more secure. Ji Jing, who had been singing against the nursery rhyme for a long time, unexpectedly agreed with the nursery rhyme, but Yu Shisai disagreed and said softly. I think Han Qian did the right thing. If the police enter the hall and are unable to deal with the gangsters immediately, the gangsters will also force the police to exit by killing hostages. We women will be even more dangerous. Han Qian's appearance is the first protection. When Nuan, Ching, I also have a very beautiful woman, and his appearance also makes the gangsters dare not act rashly and harm other women. Tong Yao squinted at Yu Shisai and replied with a frown. You are used to life abroad, and you are also used to personal heroism abroad. I can't argue with you about this matter. I just want to say that Han Qian can't be impulsive. He still has parents and family. I know what happened, and he agreed we challenge that gangster to a duel. What if he loses? Don't forget, that gangster is a lunatic who kills his accomplices. After the nursery rhyme was finished, she couldn't help but tremble. Several other women also thought of this scene, and then looked at Han Qian at the same time, with distress on their warm faces, Yan Qingqing's eyes full of love, and Ji Jing's gentleness. Seeing that Han Qian was pretending to be dead and the women were no longer paying attention to him, Yan Qingqing suddenly spoke. Yu Shisai, you said there is another woman who came out with you? She is very beautiful. After realizing it, Wen Nuan tilted his head and wondered. Woman? What woman? Yu Shisai covered her mouth and frowned. At that time, the old man was holding a box of money and I can't say this. After he came in, all the gangsters did not dare to act rashly. He threw a cigar to Han Qian, and then called Han Qian to take him away, but that Feng Lun didn't agree, so Han Qian asked the old man to take me away, and then there was that beautiful woman. She was very beautiful, and she didn't look like an ordinary person. Her temperament was more like someone active on TV. I seem to know that old man. When Nuan nodded slightly, put down the chopsticks in his hands, stood up, walked to the bed and slapped Han Qian's calf, glaring and saying angrily. Who is that woman? Han Qian, who was reading a book, looked confused, tilted his head and looked at Wen Nuan and said doubtfully. Who is this woman? Don't ask me who I am all day long when you dream about me hooking up with a girl. How can I know? I asked you and the woman who came out with PoortoRich at once. Huh? I don't know him. I haven't seen what he looks like. Go, and eat. When Nuan returned to the dining table, several women leaned forward at the same time to hear the results. When Nuan shook their heads feebly. It's probably because I don't know him. Han Qian won't lie about this kind of thing. If you know him, you know him. If you don't know him, you don't know him. Hey. Are you a little too concerned about poetry? Your heart? Isn't Han Qian single? When Nuan explained seriously to this woman who was used to living abroad. Now. I like Han Qian. As good friends, we can't like the same man. Yu Shisai shook his head slightly. No, good things should be liked by many people. This does not conflict with our relationship. It just doesn't work anyway. Oh. This is a bit careless, and Yan Qingqing's heart is about to burst with joy. She doesn't mind that Yu Shisai jumped into this big dying vat. When the time comes, Nuan will definitely try her best to guard against this best friend, and then there will be no time to look at her. This is simply awesome. When Yan Qingqing's heart blossomed, Yu Shisai suddenly smiled. I'm kidding you. I just want to see if you really like this Han Qian. I'm full. Where should I sleep? I don't want to sleep in a hotel. Nuan, let me sleep with you. I'm too lonely at night. After saying this, Tanjeo stood up and put his arms around Yu Shisai's neck, saying softly. Go to my house and tell me what happened that night. I will never let you be alone. Sister Bobo, will you go? Ji Jing said softly with an expressionless face. I'm not used to sleeping with people. Yu Shisai was forcibly dragged away by nursery rhymes, which also made Nuan relieved. Ji Jing also went home before dark, and then only Nuan and Yan Qingqing were left. Han Qian was in the intensive care unit a few days ago, and at night Yan Qingqing and Wen Nuan slept outside the hotel. Now he lives in a general ward. There are only 2 beds in the ward. Han Qian's bed must not be shared with others, and there is only 1 bed left. Yan Qingqing smiled at Wen Nuan and narrowed her eyes. You and Han Qian were husband and wife before. I'm leaving. Are you sleeping here? Nuan didn't come back to his senses for a while and shook his head gently. I don't live here. Oh, I'll lie there then. After saying that, Yan Qingqing went directly to bed and took off her stockings and skirt under the quilt. The movements were so fast that Han Qian carefully flipped through the book in his hand, looking for a catalogue about why women take off their clothes so quickly. Yan Qingqing smiled at Wen Nuan. Remember to turn off the lights when you go out. I've already paid for the hotel. Pay attention to your safety. I'm going to sleep first. Nuan stood motionless. After about 10 minutes, Nuan unbuttoned his suit, shouted angrily at Han Qian and closed his eyes. Han Qian closed his eyes obediently. When he opened them again, Nuan was already with Yan Qingqing. Lying on a bed, Nuan shouted to the bodyguard outside the door to turn off the lights. The room was dark. Han Qian was lying on the bed looking at the roof. If his guess was correct, Li Jinhai would come over again, and so would those guys who exposed each other's evidence. Wei Tiancheng is also in the crowd. At that time, I heard that Huishan's vice president was involved in bribery. Didn't you hear about Wei Tiancheng? While thinking, a subtle conversation came to Han Qian's ears. Can you please stop touching me with your breasts? You think I do? It's not just because it's too big, it's annoying to me. It always shakes when I run. It's annoying to death. Hey. A full man doesn't know that a hungry man is hungry. Stop sighing. You will never grow up again in this life. Come and let your sister touch your little strawberry, hey. Where is it? Warm, where are your breasts? Yan Hu. Don't go too far. The subtle conversation slowly turned into angry shouting. Han Qian stared at the roof and did not dare to move, because now the two women were sitting on the bed in their bras and started to fight. Cannot look. Absolutely not to watch. It should be okay to take a look, right? Han Qian just turned his head and his vision went dark. Yan Qingqing's stockings fell on Han Qian's face. Then there was another fight? Han Qian wants to go home. Very tired. After the divorce, the ex-wife became a creditor. Author, A Huan. Chapter 198. At night, Han Qian woke up from the pain of his shoulder wound. When he wanted to sit up and drink some water, a pair of hands supported his uninjured arm. It was already late at night, and Han Qian turned his head and spoke softly. Why are not you sleeping? Under the moonlight, Yan Qingqing, wearing a warm suit, helped Han Qian shake his head, picked up the water cup and fed it to Han Qian. Feeling the warm water, Han Qian said. Did you guess that I wanted to drink water? Have you been sitting here waiting for me to wake up? Yan Qingqing smiled, shook her head, and said softly. You keep moaning in pain, and I don't dare to sleep, for fear that your wound will ooze blood. It's too dishonest to sleep in the warmth, and I can't sleep either. Let me look at your shoulder. Under the moonlight, Yan Qingqing looked at the bandage that was soaked with blood again. Her right hand trembled and she wanted to touch it. When she reached halfway, she retracted it as if she was electrocuted. She gritted her teeth and said in a low voice. Feng Lun, who suffered 1,000 blows, if you deviate even a little bit, you will be killed. Han Qian closed his eyes and smiled. Fortunately, it was a little off. He wanted my life. I wanted to keep him and hand him over to the police at first. I overestimated myself and underestimated Feng Lun. My screwdriver was not strong enough to stab him. Lower abdomen, but his gun dared to kill me. I'm going to find a doctor. Yan Qingqing was a little panicked when she got up. Han Qian reached out and took her hand and whispered. Do you feel sorry for me? Yan Qingqing turned around to face Han Qian and nodded seriously. Yes. I just feel sorry for you. There were more than 10 guns pointed at your head at the party. Did you know that as long as Feng Lun was impulsive, you would be beaten into a sieve? You saved me, I am grateful to you, and I love you even more. I care about you more, but have you ever thought about what my world would be like if you had an accident? I don't know what your world has become, but I know that when you two are having an affair, you should remember that there is someone else in this room. Lying on the bed, Nuan looked at the two people holding hands with a pair of cold eyes. After speaking, he turned over and cursed softly. Adulterer. Han Qian looked embarrassed. He didn't know why things evolved from being divorced to being like this today. He didn't know what happened during this period. The doctor on duty came to change Han Qian's dressing. While changing the dressing, the two young nurses looked at Han Qian's naked body with strong aggressive eyes. Those abs, that figure, that face, and it was still a gunshot wound. Although he was wearing a gauze on his head, it could not hide his charm at all. After changing the medicine, Han Qian was told not to do strenuous exercise. When leaving, he smiled and said he had a good figure. Han Qian smiled awkwardly. At this time, Yan Qingqing held her chin and looked at Han Qian's body and said seriously. I haven't noticed that you have this ability before. Han Qian, I think you don't do much exercise on weekdays, right? Nuan hid in the quilt and whispered. If you saw him doing housework, you wouldn't say that. And can you stop feeling so horny? Come on. Go to bed. My sister will hug you to sleep. There were two beauties squeezed into a small bed. Han Qian didn't have any evil intentions at all, and he didn't dare to have any. Han Qian spent this night in pain. He couldn't turn over in bed, and the pain in his shoulders was torturing his nerves. It wasn't until dawn that Han Qian fell into a deep sleep. Early in the morning, Tu Xiao came and chatted softly with Miss Wen Nuan outside the door. Tu Xiao and Qian Ling talked on the phone and asked if they could replace the bodyguards outside the door with his. Qian Ling did not give Tu Xiao any room to maneuver. No. Tu Xiao looked at Han Qian on the hospital bed through their glass and said softly. Asleep. Nuan nodded slightly, then sighed. The medicine must have worn off last night and I was in pain all night. I just fell asleep this morning. Have you found out the information about the gangsters? Tu Xiao looked at Han Qian and sighed. It's not difficult to find out the gangsters' information, but it's even more difficult going on. I've found out a little bit about the source of the gun. I'm asking BioZ to contact people on the road. It's useless even if I find out the information now. Everyone has run away, kid. Her little aunt, if anyone has come over recently to cause trouble for my little brother, please give me your name. Wen Nuan shook his head gently. They haven't come here yet, but I guess the news about Han Qian's transfer to the ward should have spread. Yesterday, Wei Tianquan's daughter came and asked Han Qian to make any conditions. Afterwards, I asked Han Qian that he didn't know Wei Tianquan well. Han Qian didn't tell us much about Tianquan's specifics. The only thing I can confirm is that Han Qian knows many people's secrets. Tu Xiao sighed. At this time, he found that Han Qian was awake. He opened the door and walked into the ward and smiled at Han Qian. I heard that you stabbed Feng Lun in the leg with a screwdriver? Was he shot? Han Qian curled his lips and replied. Don't go out for good things. You already know all the bad things. Let me tell you one thing. You are safe now. Now all the prominent people in the city know that Tu Xiao and Han Qian are close. Boss Tu walked into the hotel alone with a gun and money to redeem the person. Regardless of the result, his move was to tell these people that he and Han Qian very good. And now Han Qian knows the secrets of these guys, and the charges for exposing each other are not big. But no one can be sure whether Han Qian knows the charges they confessed honestly, because when they were in the hotel, Han Qian and Feng Lun were before dawn. I spent some time alone. During this period, everyone saw Feng Lun hand Han Qian a piece of paper. Everyone thought that Feng Lun told Han Qian everything, because Han Qian and Feng Lun had known each other before, and after Tu Xiao's threats and Han Qian's calmness, in fact, what Feng Lun gave Han Qian was just a blank piece of paper. There is nothing on it. This was also what Feng Lun said was a gift to Han Qian. He didn't want these officials and businessmen to stand up to him. Han Qian was the best scapegoat. Tu Xiao smiled and said softly. Did Li Jinhai come over to embarrass you? I know that he is my sister-in-law's uncle. I also know that this old guy is so upright that people want to kill him. Although you are his niece and son-in-law, I still want to say that I can let him. He doesn't have time to come and trouble you. After saying this, Tu Xiao handed the bag in his hand to Han Qian and said again. Now there are only a few people around you who know that you have a gunshot wound. Little Tukan doesn't know yet, can you not tell her? Han Qian's hands were not easy to move, so Wen Nuan helped take the bag from Tu Xiao's hand. Now her impression of Tu Xiao was getting better and better. When Tu Xiao walked into the hotel with his suitcase, Nuan Wen was very I am grateful to Tu Xiao. Although Han Qian did not come out, in that dangerous situation, Tu Xiao was the only one who walked into the hotel regardless of the danger. This kindness will never be forgotten. But when she opened the bag and took out the box inside, her face instantly turned gloomy and she gritted her teeth. Boss too. Han Qian can't smoke now. And he doesn't smoke cigars. Tu Xiao smiled awkwardly at Wen Nuan. Brothers and sisters, you can't blame me for this. Han Qian told me to prepare cigars for him when he was in the hotel. I spent a lot of money to get this box in Italy. It tastes good. Nuan glanced at Han Qian, wrinkled his nose and snorted coldly. I'll save it for you first. You can't even get a cigarette before you're discharged from the hospital. Humph. Nuan Nuan left the ward holding the box. After she left, Tu Xiao leaned forward and said in a low voice. Feng's Haida is not dead. Han Qian's eyes suddenly widened and he cursed. He was shot 4 times and he's still alive. Tu Xiao nodded and whispered. 2 shots were in the legs, 1 in the lower abdomen, and 1 in the arm. You haven't woken up yet. I'm worried that he will bite you when he wakes up. Did I let Biozi do it? After the words fell, the door of the ward was pushed open. Li Jinhai walked into the ward and looked at Tu Xiao coldly and said angrily. Old dog, you'd better be honest. After the divorce, the ex-wife became a creditor. Author, Ahuan. Chapter 199. In ancient times, Li Jinhai was the governor in charge of one side's military power, while Tu Xiao was the leader of the Jianghu gang. Since ancient times, these 2 types of people have never lived in harmony. In the ward, the 2 guys didn't like each other. Tu Xiao didn't want to provoke Li Jinhai, but it didn't mean that he was afraid of him. Outside the ward, Guan Yunbiao squatted outside the door of the ward and looked at the few agents in front of him. He refused to give way and these people couldn't get in. Guan Yunbiao just said a word. My brother is not in good health right now. There will be noise when there are many people. How about you put me in handcuffs and go to the station to have tea? Several people in the bureau looked at Guan Degu with disdain, but they were unwilling to provoke this barefoot guy. In the ward, Li Jinhai took out a cigarette and threw it to Han Qian. He turned around and squinted at Tu Xiao. The latter curled his lips and took out a small box with a thin cigar in his pocket. Li Jinhai curled his lips and cursed. Upstart. I'm willing, but you care about me when I spend money? Li Jinhai, stop pretending to be kind here. Now that Feng's Haida is not dead, how much punishment can he receive? Li Jinhai frowned and sighed, sitting on another hospital bed and saying weakly. I'm not sure now. The higher authorities have already intervened in this matter, but I think what those guys at the Yamen gate mean is that Feng's Haida has a backstage. If all the hostages in the hotel that day were witnesses to Feng's Haida, he shouldn't be that big. You don't need to worry about this matter, it's more useful than anything else to make your subordinates be more honest. My people are not going to take money and wrongfully accuse a good man. Get the out of here. Li Jinhai never said that he had a good temper, nor did he say that he didn't curse. Whenever he saw Tu Xiao, he couldn't suppress the anger in his heart. He almost got this old guy arrested many times, but every time he was just a little bit closer. Li Jinhai himself didn't believe it when he said that no one had tipped him off. Too lazy to talk to Tu Xiao, Li Jinhai looked at Han Qian and said softly. Following the information you gave me, we found out some information about the gangsters. I came here today just to see your injuries as an elder, and also, don't hang out with Tu Xiaoxi from now on. You are a white-collar worker now, and don't you think it's shameful for these gangsters to hang out together? After saying that, he took the cigarette out of Han Qian's mouth, flicked the ashes and put it into his mouth. Han Qian smiled and did not speak. The atmosphere in the room became quiet. The 3 men were smoking cigarettes and each had their own thoughts. With Tu Xiao here, Li Jinhai had some things he didn't want to say, and Tu Xiao was the same, waiting for the other to leave first. Yan Qingqing, who came back from the company to handle things, frowned when she looked at the police and the big dog at the door. When she opened the door, she saw 3 grown men blowing smoke in the ward, and her anger instantly rushed to the top of her head. He walked to the window and opened it aggressively, then pointed at Han Qian and started shouting angrily. You don't know what's going on with you now? You can't even eat and you start smoking? You don't want to live anymore but you still care about our feelings. Now we are taking turns to take care of you, and you treat us like this? Director Li, and it's okay for Boss 2 to smoke, so why don't you smoke too? They are old and don't want to live a good life, and you don't want to live either? If you don't want to be hospitalized, get out of the hospital now. Han Qian, who was scolded, felt a little embarrassed, frowned, and said in a deep voice, "Ching Ching. I love your second uncle? My name is Mr. Yan." After saying this, Yan Ching Ching turned to Li Jinhai and Tu Xiao, bowed slightly, and said calmly, "I'm talking about Han Qian, you two, don't take it seriously." It was okay not to say this, but the two of them were a little embarrassed to say it. Tu Xiao said childishly that Li Jinhai asked Han Qian to smoke it, and then stood up and smiled at Han Qian. "When you are discharged from the hospital, I will take care of you. If Li Jinhai doesn't leave, you won't be sensible. You tell me." Tu Xiao pried Li Jinhai away as well. Watching the two of them leave the ward and close the door, Yan Qing Qing began to tidy up the bed and collect the cigarette ashes, and began to nag dissatisfiedly. "You are such an old person, and you are not sensible at all. If you don't smoke, will you die or go crazy? You can't help but go out to smoke, and then come in after you finish smoking. Isn't this going to harm people? No, I have to give warmth. Make a phone call and ask her to tell Li Jinhai not to come again." After saying that, Yan Qing Qing lay directly on Han Qian and Han Qian's lap. She took out her mobile phone to make a call. As soon as she took out the phone, Yan Qing Qing suddenly found that only Han Qian and her were left in the ward. When Yan Qing Qing looked at Han Qian, he smiled and put his little hand into the quilt. When the cold little hand fell on Han Qian's leg, Han Qian couldn't help but trembled and said tremblingly, What are you going to do?" The doctor said I can't do strenuous exercise." Yan Qingqing's face was like a peach blossom, her fox eyes looked at Han Qian affectionately, and her voice was soft and charming. "Han Qian, you said what should you do if you smoke in the future?" Ouch." As soon as Han Qian said the word "I," his expression instantly turned painful. Yan Qing Qing clenched her hands in the quilt, squinted at Han Qian and smiled. "If I catch you smoking in the ward next time, I will drag you down. Let you be Father Han, yours. Do you understand?" "I understand. Let go first." "You are a girl, how can you catch me?" It's okay. You're a dad." Yan Qing Qing let go of her hands with satisfaction and turned to go to the bathroom. At noon, the doctor came over to check Han Qian's body and whispered that he could eat properly. After hearing this, Han Qian started to eat dumplings, pork, and cabbage. The famous vixen of the Glory Group gently fed this great hero the dumplings and complained in a low voice, "How come a man is jealous when he eats dumplings?" After eating a few dumplings, Han Qian couldn't eat any more and shook his head slightly at the dumplings Yan Qing Qing brought over. "Don't eat. I have something that may bother you. Eating one, be good. I can't eat any more. You should remember who was the hostage on the day of the party. Think about it, separate the government officials and businessmen, and then make a detailed list. It's best to have their titles and photos. I don't think I can keep it. If you continue to be so passive, you can't be too kind, right?" Yan Qing Qing put down the dumplings, picked up the dumpling soup, cooled it gently and tested the temperature with her lips, then fed it to Han Qian, squinting and smiling. "Actually, you are not kind to begin with. You always think you are kind. I have prepared a list of when to start dating. I went to the toilet and you started making phone calls. Since you don't want to come to the hospital to visit me, then I'll come to visit them." Han Cha pulled out the needle from his hand, got out of bed and stretched. The wound on his shoulder tore open again, but Han Qian seemed to feel nothing this time, standing in front of the window with his bare back. Now that the script of life has begun, you must play the role you should play. You are listening to Novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. After the divorce, The ex-wife became a creditor. Author, A Huan. Chapter 200. Yan Qingqing made the first call. The conversation on the phone was very simple and to the point. Han Jian wants to see you. With just one sentence, Yan Qingqing hung up the phone, stood up, walked to the bathroom door and opened the door directly. Fortunately, Han Jian had already lifted his pants and looked at Yan Qingqing a little annoyed. "What are you doing? What are you doing? Is it indecent?" Yan Qingqing squinted at Han Jian and said disdainfully. "I want to molest you, but I still need to wait for you to get up. My dear, I just don't want to take advantage of others. I just made an appointment for you, and he should be here soon." Han Jian walked out of the bathroom, sat on the bed and stretched out his hand to Yan Qingqing. The latter turned her head to the other side with a cold face and said coldly, "No." Han Jian chuckled. "I know you must have brought it to me, Qingqing." "Ah!" Yan Qingqing burst into an irritated roar, took out a box of cigarettes from her bag, opened it, broke it into half and handed it to Han Jian, saying angrily, "I'm going to chop you up if you're being coquettish." "Okay, who did you date?" "Luo Shanda, from the finance bureau, is short, a little fat, and has white hair. He squatted not far behind me and went new on that night. Don't ask me if I know this guy. Does it affect you whether you know me or not?" Han Jian frowned, lowered his head and exerted no force. This Luo Shanda had some impression. He needed to think about it. When Han Jian was thinking, the cigarette in his mouth was taken away by Yan Qingqing, replaced with a piece of toffee and stuffed into Han Jian's mouth. The movement was not very gentle, and touched the wound in Han Jian's mouth. Han Jian raised his head and glared at Yan Qingqing, who stuck out his tongue to apologize. "The only one who can make Lady Yaksha do this is our great fairy Han." His performance at the party had completely smitten Yan Qingqing. How could she not like such a man? At the same time, she was very grateful for the warmth. She agreed to divorce before she met Han Jian. "The more I look at Wen Nuan now, the more I think she is so cute." Yan Qingqing did not disturb Han Jian while he was thinking. It was not until the voices of Tu Xiao's people and Jian Ling's bodyguards came outside that Han Jian came back to his senses. Yan Qingqing stood up, walked to the door, and opened it. For a moment, it was quiet outside. Yan Qingqing frowned and nodded to Guan Degu. The latter got out of the way. When he walked in the door, Han Jian was reading the book brought by Nursery Rhyme. He lowered his head and spoke. "Qingqing, go downstairs and buy me a pack of cigarettes." Yan Qingqing nodded and turned around and walked out of the ward. When the door closed, Han Jian raised his head and looked at Luo Shanda, and he smiled. "What is fate? Fate is like flies and cow dung. No one can live without the other." Luo Shanda was the guy at the party who held Han Jian's legs and begged him to be sent out. At this moment, Luo Shanda looked at Han Jian condescendingly and spoke in an official tone. "Comrade Han Jian, we sympathize with you for your experience. As long as you actively cooperate with the police, the gangsters will be brought to justice. If you have an affair with Feng Lun, I will also look after your relationship. I will give you some help and try to reduce your sentence." "That's what I said." Han Jian put down the book in his hand, raised his head and smiled lightly at Luo Shanda. "Can I honestly tell you everything I know?" "Director Luo, I may know more than you expect." "Director Luo, please sit down and talk." At this point, Han Jian's smile became weird and he narrowed his eyes slightly. At this time, Tong Yao opened the door and walked in. At this time, Han Jian spoke coldly. "You should wait until I go inside to visit Director Luo later." Luo Shanda's face turned ugly, and he slowly turned his head to look sideways at the Nursery Rhyme at the door. Han Jian also turned his head, frowning and said in a low voice, "Go out." I don't know where the Nursery Rhyme was at this time. He put the thermos bucket at his feet and walked out of the room obediently. In Han Qian's eyes, nursery rhyme was so obedient that he must have taken the wrong medicine. Luo Shanda slowly turned his head. Looking at Han Qian, he frowned and said in a deep voice. "Threaten me. The amount you took should be enough to stay here for a lifetime, man. When you have money, you become bad. Did you see the guy in red clothes outside when you came in? No one feels comfortable being stared at by him. Right." Luo Shanda's face became more gloomy. He pulled up a chair and sat down. When he took out the cigarette and was about to light it, Han Qian coughed twice. Luo Shanda paused for a moment. He didn't light the cigarette or take it off. He sighed softly at Han Qian. "Tone. I have a very good relationship with my warm parents. If after you step down, the new person who takes your place will have a better relationship with me, which one is more important? If Director Luo is willing to put down his position, I will keep your secret. I remember that except me, everyone present that night, no one knows which article you violated. Do you want me to tell you what happened now so you can reminisce? But I can't guarantee whether there was anyone eavesdropping at the door." Luo Shanda finally couldn't hold it any longer, frowned and sighed. "Are you going to use this condition to eat me for the rest of your life? Your life is probably short, right? Why don't you think more about future generations?" Han Qian. Luo Shan stood up, pointed at Han Qian and walked around, gritting his teeth with anger on his face. "I've known you for a long time. I've known you since I was held hostage by the robbers. I'm too lazy to talk nonsense with you. Tell me what you want me to do." Han Qian narrowed his eyes and smiled. "Feng's Haida is not dead. He will definitely take revenge. Everyone suspects that Feng Lun and I have colluded. I don't want Feng's Haida to appear in his current position. Prepare a report? Oh. By the way, I can tell you something. After that, you can choose a person who is beneficial to you and promote him. The current Feng's Haida took someone else's position back then, and the person he put in prison should be the prosecutor. Which department do you need to cooperate with you? I'll invite him over now." Luo Shanda asked stubbornly. "What can I get?" Han Qian smiled lightly. "Freedom and enjoyment are the most precious things to you, aren't they? Give me a cigarette." "Ha? Delusion. Leaving? Don't you need me to leave you a phone number? I don't want to have any contact with you." Luo Shanda left after not staying for 10 minutes, because in front of Han Qian he felt the humiliation and powerlessness he had not felt for many years. Kill Han Qian? He didn't have the ability and courage yet. What Han Qian said was a threat, and the rest was the guy outside the door. No one in the entire city wants to be targeted by this guy. After he left, Tong Yao opened the door and walked into the ward, walking through the room. "This seems to be from the finance bureau? Your friend? By the way, Wen Nuan said that her company has something to do and asked me to send you some dumplings. Wrapped by hand. You're so beautiful, let's eat the leftovers in the cafeteria. Let me eat this guy tonight. Help me call Guan Yun Biao over." "Oh. I don't know what's going on, but today's nursery rhyme was very obedient." Han Qian always felt that there was danger approaching. Could it be that this monster wanted to assassinate him? Guan Yun Biao walked into the ward with his head turned 3 times, saw the dumplings on the table, opened the lunch box, pinched one with his hand and threw it into his mouth, saying vaguely, "Is something wrong? Brother Han, you are so lucky." Han Qian closed his eyes and sighed. "You should watch less Jing Palace dramas from now on. Just swallow the dumplings and we'll be chatting in 10 minutes. You can say it now. I'm afraid that nursery rhymes will poison me. You should try it first." Guan Yun Biao stopped chewing, turned his head and looked at the expressionless nursery rhyme, then looked at Han Qian, then picked up a dumpling and threw it into his mouth and continued. No, how can Teacher Tong do such a thing if he is a good teacher? What he has to do is a dirty job like me. Luo Shanda recruited you. Watching Guan Yunbiao eating dumplings, Han Qian felt that they were quite delicious, but unfortunately he couldn't move his hands, so he had to give up. He shook his head at Guan Yunbiao. He didn't recruit me. I want to recruit him. After you eat the dumplings, you send someone to look at this Luo Shanda to see if he can find his lover. I'm not sure if there is one, but I feel the same. After a man has money, it's nothing more than cars and women. He definitely wouldn't dare touch a good car, but women can. Okay, let me make a call. These dumplings are very delicious. They look like they have just been cooked. Teacher Tong is very good at making them. I have long heard from my eldest daughter that the lunch that Teacher Tong brings to me every day is very exquisite and can be eaten. Mr. Tong. Okay, go quickly, my brother Guan, I'm anxious. The dumplings have been taken away, brother Han, leave again. Teacher Tong, goodbye. After the divorce, the ex-wife became a creditor. Author, Ahuan. Chapter 201. In the ward, Tong Yao sat beside the bed and whispered something in a low voice. Han Qian didn't hear clearly, so he turned his head and asked in confusion. What did you say? Nursery Rhyme lowered her head and whispered. Han Qian, can you at? Hashtag you an at? Hashtag be a little bit. What the hell? Don't speak English, just speak it properly. I said. Can you lend me some money? Tong Yao mustered up the courage and started shouting. Han Qian was still a little confused after being yelled at, so he tilted his head and said weakly. Are you so aggressive in borrowing money now? Did you borrow money from loan sharks again? Are you short of money? You waited for Ching Ching to come back, and my wallet was taken away by Nuan Nuan. After hearing Han Qian's agreement, Tan Jiao sighed softly. I applied for a credit card not long ago for emergency purposes. When I went to number 3 high school, my colleagues knew my birthday for some reason. Even after asking, it was hard to say no to treat me. After all, I am a newcomer. At this point, Tong Yan's eyes were filled with mist, and then she raised her head and cried. Who would have thought that they brought 20 or 30 people with them, eating, drinking, and then singing? My credit card only has a limit of 6,000, and it was all swindled. Now I only have it costs 24.50 cents, otherwise I wouldn't be shameless enough to come over for lunch at noon, and I won't even be able to use my school meal card. Hey. Don't cry. Don't cry. What a big deal. I'll call Ching Ching now and ask her to withdraw some cash for you. Can you not let her know, Han Qian? Okay, anything is fine. As long as you don't cry, anything is fine. Otherwise, they will come over later and think I've tricked you. You go back to school first, and I'll have someone give you your money in the afternoon. In the past, we were friends, but in this city, friends are your backers and pillars. If you have anything, you can come to me. I can't help you much, but I can still help you with this little help. Then I'm leaving, you, don't forget. Do not worry. Tong Yao also left. Han Qian, who was lying on the hospital bed, smiled faintly. He had a shadow of Tong Yao, but he had to borrow the money. Tong Yao was the one who cooked when he was sick. He called the doctor the most after being hospitalized. It's also a nursery rhyme. We usually quarrel when we get along, but can we look on coldly when there is trouble? The human heart is all flesh. What's more, it's a girl working hard on her own. When Yan Ching Ching came back, she turned back 3 times every step of the way, talking as she walked. Why are Teacher Tong crying? Did you bully her? Who can I bully in this situation? By the way, do you have any cash on you? Give me some. Tanya has some financial problems. It would be good for her as a trainee teacher to have 1,000 yuan a month. I was tricked once by my colleagues, and Tong Yao is not a person who refuses to pay back the money. Yan Qingqing watched Han Qian sigh helplessly, took out his leather bag from the closet and threw it to Han Qian, sighing. You are just too kind to the people around you. You always make them feel that they owe you something. You can take the money yourself and keep it in your little coffers. Then take 10,000 first. Anyway, I won't be able to touch this money for a while. Give the money to Guan Yunbiao and ask him to send it over in the afternoon. Don't forget it. And Luo Shanda seems a little uncomfortable. I'm so convinced, I want to punish this guy. Before he finished speaking, the antique mobile phone began to rebel. He took the phone with difficulty with the hand buried in the needle, pressed the answer button, drank the water on the table at Yan Qingqing, and said casually. Hi, hello Han Qian. It seems that brother Han is recovering well, but I can't move my right leg yet. The doctor told me that I need to recuperate for a while. I was too careless. How can a person who can beat a toad until it is covered in blood be a good person? Thank you, I'm still lying in the hospital now. Don't talk nonsense to me. Tell me the evidence of Luo Shanda's crime, and I'll tell you something. Luo Shanda? Let me look for it. Hurry up, Mom. Don't force me to hang up the phone. The matter is about Feng's Haida. Yan Qingqing, who was holding a glass of water, heard that Han Qian's foul language didn't sound like a joke at all. She tilted her head and silently asked who it was. Han Qian made a mouth gesture to Yan Qingqing. Feng Lun. Yan Qingqing stood up immediately. The injured water glass fell on the quilt without noticing it. She ran to the window and closed the curtains. Then she ran to the door and leaned against the door. Then she breathed a sigh of relief. Han Qian tilted his head. Looking at Yan Qingqing confused, what are these girls busy with? At this time Feng Lun also spoke. Luo Shanda? The one from the finance bureau? You have a good confidant. He's not old. Well, it's not convenient to call you. I'll send it to you later. You can collect it wherever you want. Han Qian's guess was indeed correct. This guy really had a canary. Looking at the weak energy he walked with, he looked like he had been drained by alcohol and sex. Now that Feng Lun said it, Han Qian no longer hesitated and spoke. Feng's Haida is not dead. My grandma Haida. Feng Lun didn't hesitate for a moment. He scolded him when he opened his mouth. It seemed that he didn't expect that this guy was still alive. Then there was silence on the other side. Han Qian didn't rush to speak. After a full minute, he sighed on the phone. Don't say anything. I'm not sure if anyone is monitoring our call. Now everyone suspects that I have something to do with you. Now that Feng's Haida can't catch you, he will definitely take it out on me. Damn it. I really want to thank you so much, that screwdriver should be pierced into your heart. You want to touch Feng's Haida. I want to live a good humming life. This grandson is so insidious, how can I keep him? I should have known I was cooperating with you, but now I'm hiding in hiding, brother Han. I left you some money, do you want it? Snapped. Han Qian hung up the phone directly. He didn't want to fall into Feng Lun's trap anymore. Yan Qingqing trotted forward and asked what Feng Lun said. Han Qian told Yan Qingqing without any reservation. At the same time, Li Jinhai from the city bureau was furious. He was about to hear where Feng Lun hid the money. He knew that he would definitely not be able to take away so much cash. But Han Qian, the little bastard, actually hung up the phone? The more he thought about it, the angrier he became. He picked up his phone and called Han Qian, the little bastard. Before he could say a word, the little bastard hung up the phone. Li Jinhai closed his eyes and took a deep breath. Go to the hospital. As soon as he went out, he was troubled by various things. When he arrived at the hospital, the ward was full of women. Li Jinhai stood at the door and pointed at Han Qian and gritted his teeth. Where is Feng Lun? Han Qian replied seriously. There's an elephant barking nearby. Li Jinhai turned around and left. Han Qian said quickly. Maybe it's from the TV. Li Jinhai stopped and walked to the hospital bed and raised his hand. In an instant, 3 women appeared in front of Han Qiandu. Miss Wen, Empress Yaksha, and Ji. The 3 people glared at Li Jinhai. Li Jinhai pointed at Han Qian and gritted his teeth. You're waiting for you to be discharged from the hospital, oh. Little bastard, next time Feng Lun calls you, just chat with him. We're not familiar with each other.